believers is a people that shall pray.
He called me first to be his own, and out of that I came to love him because he first loved me. Hello everyone, my name is Bethel, and I was raised in a Christian background, and my family, especially my parents, really loved Jesus. So it was natural for me to pick up the Bible when I was young to read, and it was a lot of Bible stories were the ways that I was taught how to read and taught how to learn the English language. Now, around the age of 3 or 4, I went to a service worship night with my family, and I like to say that it was not me who gave my life to Jesus, but rather Jesus took my life. At that time, I didn't really have an understanding, but the pastor at the end of the service had called people to walk up if they wanted to give their lives to Jesus. And there was the little boy, 3-4-year-old me, who walked up. Now, I'm telling this story not as actually one who has the memory, but rather my parents were the ones who told me that this is what I did. So the pastor prayed for me and blessed me and blessed my walk with Jesus. So over the years has been coming to unravel and understand what truly happened that evening, that the Lord took my life. And the way that this actually played out is I was very much involved in Sunday school, very much involved in just everything that was involved in church life. But I began to notice moments in my life where I saw self-righteousness, legalism, and pride as a means of relating with God. And I didn't really recognize how deeply entrenched this was, but there were moments of relief where I would truly have the conviction of the Lord and cry out to him, and I would also feel the release of the Lord's mercy and grace upon my life. And then this happened in around high school, around the age of 15 or 16. The conviction was great that I was perhaps doing the motions of Christian life. I was going to church, I was reading and memorizing scriptures to share with others, but I didn't really have a true relationship with Jesus that was intimate, right? Jesus tells the Pharisees that you search the scriptures thinking that in them that you have life, but they testify of me. And in many ways, I searched the scriptures, but I did not actually encounter life or encounter Jesus. And this was until I went to a youth retreat at the age of 15, where I saw young people, younger than me and some older than me, who were weeping before the Lord, worshiping him and giving their lives to him. And I was convicted by that, and in that time, I opened up my heart to receive whatever the Lord would have me receive in those 3 days, and he gave me a gift from the Holy Spirit in having a deeper communion and prayer with the Lord. And that really kick-started a longing and a pursuit for Jesus, that I was willing to go wherever, at least wherever that I knew that he was, so that I could find him. And so this meant during my summers, I would go an hour, walk an hour, run to go to the youth nights, just to make sure that I would be able to spend time in the presence of the Lord. And in different ways, I got in trouble with that with different people. But it was in that the Lord began to draw me to run after him as he was running ahead. So he called me to follow him. And at the same time, there was still the issue of self-righteousness that still needed to be worked out. And so over time, the Lord began to convict me of that. And my response to that conviction was to fall into another form of sin, which was actually trying to hide the light that God had given to me. I recognized that in different ways that the Lord had made me actually unique and different, but I began to hide that light under a bushel because I didn't want my difference to be so pronounced to others that it would be a means for me to be prideful. In some ways, I became lukewarm and neutered the fire of God that He had placed upon my heart. And right before I went into college, I felt the Lord was convicting me to make a choice. He specifically drew the line on the sand and said that you have the choice, obviously, to be like Daniel and the 3 Hebrew boys, or to eat of the meat and the foods of Babylon. And I made the choice that I wanted to be like Daniel, and that's how I got into university. And getting into the university and college, the Lord propelled that yes, and surrounded me with my with brothers and sisters who became the 3 Hebrew boys alongside me. And from there, just gathering in saints who truly desired to know the Lord, I began to grow in exponential ways and do things that I didn't imagine that I would do, and pray prayers I wouldn't imagine that I would pray, and be in spaces that I wouldn't imagined that I would be in. And so all through the years, it's been the unraveling of a beautiful story of the Lord in His love, pulling me to Himself, convicting me of my own sin and of righteousness, and showing me that I cannot do this alone, that in weakness, in humility, in sobriety, and in poverty of spirit, that is truly where we find God. So I came to recognize that my calling is Jesus, my calling is union with God through Jesus Christ, and to live in that. And whatever I do, wherever I am, whether it's in school or whether it's in the grocery store, my calling is expressed in my sending to wherever I am, wherever country I will be, state, family, whatever it may be. One major example, and which is where I am now, is in terms of campus ministry in the United States. So I entered the university with Jesus making it clear to me that He wanted me to be consecrated unto Himself and to be like Daniel and the 3 Hebrew boys. And so I consecrated myself to the Lord, spent about a month doing so, and He gave me specific instructions and made specific agreements with me on what that would look like. And one of the major things actually that I asked of the Lord in those days was that I would bring someone to Jesus in my first year in university. Now this was for me a big ask because I wasn't sure if I was able to do that, but it was a prayer of faith. And when I went to university, I met so many different people. The campus I schooled at has hundreds of nations represented, so quite literally, the nations in the world are within your grasp in the university. And so in that time, I spent a lot of time in prayer and in fellowship with brothers and sisters, but I also had a lot of friends who were non-believers, many Muslim, and many just non-believers who have never really had a relationship with Jesus, or they grew up in certain backgrounds that were lukewarm or whatever it may be. And there was a specific friend of mine that I had made who, within the first 3 months of school and in being in relationship with them and friendship with them, they began to ask questions, and started holding Bible studies and sometimes having arguments and debates with friends who were atheists. And eventually, by the end of my freshman year, my first year of college, one of my friends gave their lives to Jesus, and this continued to happen into my second and third year. That now there are a couple friends of mine who are walking with the Lord who were not walking with the Lord before, and at least who have given their yes to Jesus. And that's a little bit of my story.
Company of believers is a people